Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Westplex Radio. It's time for What About Nutrition, the show that really gets you and your family healthy. It's a great show. O'Fallon Nutrition in their brand new location, Highway K and Mexico Road in O'Fallon, Missouri, here in the Westplex. Westplex Radio, the show airs twice each weekend. It airs from 8:30 to 9 right before Kelly Lamb, Deliciously Alive, 100.7 FM, and also airs every Sunday after Jim Beck's Gospel Hours at 10 a.m. to 10:30. So spread the word. Watch your Facebook. We give you reminders to listen to the show, and you can always listen to it online at westplexradio.com, and the shows are archived at o'fallonnutrition.com. O'fallonnutrition.com. Steve Gasper turning it over to Mr. Nutrition himself. What a great show we've got in store for you today. Turning it over to Mr. Nutrition, David Gall of O'Fallon Nutrition.
Well, thanks a lot, Steve, and I just want to remind everybody here at the beginning of What About Nutrition that this program is not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any disease, and always speak to your healthcare practitioner before making any changes to your supplements, diet, or exercise program. And with that, I'm really excited to have Bruce Topping from Garden of Life back on the show today. Of course, as many of you know, Garden of Life is one of the main vendors in our store at O'Fallon Nutrition. It's a brand that we've sold for going on 8 or 9 years now that we've really been pleased with, and so have our customers. And we got into it because our founder, Jordan Rubin, has a disease called Crohn's disease, a major gut disease. And my mother has Crohn's disease, and that's part of what prompted me to get into nutrition. And I've used a lot of the strategies that companies like Garden of Life support, using probiotics and things like that. And I feel that they've made a huge difference in my health as well as my family's. But with that, Bruce, in our last episode, you and I discussed the benefits of probiotics, what makes the raw probiotics by Garden of Life so unique, and what makes the raw enzymes by Garden of Life so unique. And we had fun discussions about how they, can support digestive health and issues like biofilm and things like that. And today we're going to talk about some really exciting products that are taking our industry by storm and our store by storm, and that's the raw meal and raw protein by Garden of Life, as well as their other foundational nutrition products such as Perfect Food, which is a favorite of mine, and their really incredible line of vitamins called Vitamin Code, which are definitely unique. So, Bruce, we have all sorts of folks that come into the store who look for protein products, and we promote this idea of using protein-based smoothies as a way to give yourself a really nutritious meal that can have good fats in it, and of course protein and amino acids. And also, these are foods that if you choose your products wisely, you can avoid artificial stuff and all sorts of other harmful ingredients. So what was Garden of Life's goal when they created Perfect Meal and raw meal and raw protein?
Well, starting off with raw protein, we were really trying to create a product that was kind of the best of both worlds. And what I mean by that is that when typically for the last 20 years, when you walked into the health food store and you were looking at protein powders, you typically either bought an animal protein, such as whey protein or casein, a milk protein, or you bought plant proteins, mostly soy. And so there's long been this debate about whether you buy animal proteins, which cannot really be raw. They're always pasteurized and processed with heat, several stages. Mm-hmm. But they're very digestible. The thing about whey proteins is that they have a really good biological value, which means that your body is able to break down the nitrogen, the amino acids, really well and carry them into the blood. But on the other hand, it's not really the cleanest source. It's always been heated, generally from, giant feedlots is sort of the sad truth of where many of the cheaper proteins, not to say there aren't other good ones on the market,
sure,
but most of the whey proteins out there are generally from the cheese industry and are generally sourced from sort of that conventional factory agricultural side, which is kind of why health food stores exist in the first place, was to get away from that. So
good point.
Whey proteins are sort of really digestible, but not that clean. And then the other world was the plant proteins, where it's almost the exact inverse. They're really clean. They're not from the feedlot, and it hasn't been full of anabolic steroids or hormones or antibiotics. But on the other hand, the digestibility is low because beans and grains and seeds all have enzyme inhibitors. And it's actually the same reason that humans can store them in a grain bin. Winter storage is only possible because of those enzyme inhibitors, which are the same enzyme inhibitors that actually prevent our enzymes from cleaving and chopping into that protein and absorbing all the little peptides very effectively. So for the last 20 years, you either bought a really clean protein that wasn't that digestible, like a soy protein, or you bought a really digestible protein that wasn't all that clean, like whey protein.
Wow.
So, it's sort of what we tried to do was create the best of both worlds, something that is a sprout. And that's really the magic for breaking down the enzyme inhibitors, is offering something that's made out of 13 sprouts and offers a hugely, really like a tower of digestible protein. I mean, it's actually about 98 to 99% correlated to whey protein, meaning you're going to get pretty much the same nitrogen value from our raw protein as you would a whey protein, except not from the feedlots, not from the cheese factory, no sulfuric acid or bleaching or pasteurization.
Wow, that's a really good point and a really good education on protein, and I wanted to review a couple of the points you made there for our audience. So you commented on retaining nitrogen, and many of our listeners may not be aware, but protein is the only macronutrient that has nitrogen in it. Carbohydrates and fat do not. And so scientists can do different things where they will look at the nitrogen levels retained in the body, and that can give them an idea of how well the body is retaining and absorbing protein. And it's a way to also investigate the quality of various proteins. And whey protein, WHEY, has always been kind of the gold standard for this nitrogen retention. And what you're saying is that by sprouting these different plant foods, Garden of Life is able to come up with a really clean protein that still has this incredible, nitrogen retention ability of whey?
That's exactly right. And so one extra thing we do to it that, kind of hearkening back to our last episode where we talked about probiotics, we actually put a huge amount of a really special probiotic called Subtilis. It's a soil strain. And what it does is it makes more peptidases and more proteases. So these are protein-digesting enzymes. Mm-hmm. So basically, we're putting little enzyme factories to work in your gut, trying to give you every advantage to make sure that not only is it fully sprouted and breaking down all those enzyme inhibitors, but then also increasing the enzyme value of the gut with probiotic bacteria, some really special ones.
So 2 major points there, and this almost explains to our audience, I love doing this, the benefits of sprouting. So when you allow these plant foods to sprout, what you're saying is that deactivates these enzyme inhibitors that are already found in those foods. And so when they're sprouted, those enzyme inhibitors are deactivated, and so that allows the product to be more efficiently digested by our gut. But then you guys are taking it a step further and actually adding probiotics, which can manufacture enzymes within our gut. So you've got a 1-2 punch of digestibility. Is that the case?
That's exactly right. And
wow.
This protein, as you said before, there's just so many proteins out there. I was actually hearing somewhere in some industry show I was at that there's actually about 1,700 protein SKUs, and meaning, there's just dozens and hundreds of types of protein. I've even seen an artichoke protein out there now. But of all the proteins, ours is currently number 1. And I think that's because we've hit this magic scenario, like I said, really digestible and really clean. Whereas I always point out that, gosh, if you've been to the locker room in the gym lately, it's not the best smelling place. There's a lot of guys eating a lot of really harsh, caustically processed proteins with really refined sugars. And I was actually just talking to a guy in Texas who told me that this is the only protein that he can actually swim. I mean, he's a professional swimmer. He's a very athletic gentleman. And he said he swims with raw protein in his gut, where he says most proteins, if he takes them before his big swim, he feels like there's a lead weight.
Well, that's a really good point, and that is something that comes up at the store all the time. And, without getting too frank about the subject, some people do experience various digestive symptoms from certain protein powders. And especially the ones that are, made with excessive amounts of heat and have other aspects that are difficult to digest, excessive amounts of sugar, that kind of thing. So it's really unique to talk about having a clean protein where somebody, in this case, the swimmer that you're referring to, is actually able to swim after he consumes it.
Yeah. So it became number 1 even before we had any flavors. And now, at O'Fallon Nutrition, we're really pleased to offer our new vanilla and cacao flavored, which of course cacao is raw chocolate. And
right.
It's really much, a little different than regular chocolate. It's more nutritious in certain ways. But what we've offered is something with no sugar. At Garden of Life, we're pretty down on sugar. We don't like to use any refined sugar really ever in anything we ever use. So what we're using is a form of stevia, And I will say to the audience that I generally have in the past not been the biggest fan of stevia. There's a lot of stevias out there that taste kind of weird, kind of off, sometimes downright artificial to my mouth. And what we're doing with ours, what I've learned is that a lot of stevias are made where they take the whole plant and they throw it in like a big shredder. And so you get all the little sticks and stems.
Oh, yeah.
That are, what they call terpenoids, these molecules that are found in the woody stick materials that carry through in the extraction and give it a lot of off notes. Well, at Garden of Life, we use a special type of stevia that's just a water extraction on the leaves. So you're getting a much cleaner taste profile. In fact, a lot of people, when we sample this out, they don't even know it's stevia. It tastes really good. We use real vanilla beans in the vanilla flavor, and we use real cacao. In fact, quite a bit of it. There's 3 grams of fiber added to the cacao flavor just from all the cacao mass.
Wow, that's amazing. So it's actually adding cacao bean or raw cocoa beans, basically, as opposed to just adding like a flavor. And you're right. We've had a lot of consumers tasting this product in the store. We've been giving all sorts of samples out, and other folks have been purchasing single packets of it. And the response has been really incredible, particularly because it's interesting. And I want our audience to know this product was not available with a flavor until this year, and it still became the #1 protein in the industry, despite the fact that it wasn't even flavored. And I think that's a testament to the consumer's ability to recognize quality when they see it.
Yeah, you nailed it. I think that people, it's that perfect storm. People have been crying for something that is really, really clean, gluten-free, no dairy, no feedlot products, but also something that is, going to put that nitrogen into your body. They say there's 50,000 fluids and tissues that are built from protein. That's, pretty much everything. It's very important. So the idea is we wanted to create something that is just the best of both worlds.
Boy, perfect point. And one thing that occurs to me in the last 45 seconds or so of the first segment. So raw protein, is that something that people of all ages can use?
On our label it says not for children, and that's really because of all the bacteria, the Bacillus subtilis that's in there.
Uh-huh.
We take a pretty conservative angle. It's not to say that Bacillus subtilis is really known to be harmful for children. It's just that it can be fairly cleansing. A lot of people have, they have a lot of waste products that have accumulated in their bowel. And if they're really young and they have, maybe other health challenges, there's some conceivable notion that maybe putting lots and lots of Bacillus subtilis into their bowel is going to give them kind of a healing crisis as it starts to detoxify and break open all these waste products and actually sort of create a bit of a healing crisis wherein your body's trying to detoxify all these metabolic residues and biofilms and just trash from the bowel.
So because of the fact that it has that probiotic in it and it may be a little bit cleansing in the beginning, that's a reason why folks may not choose to use it with kids. But at the other hand, it's a benefit in terms of its should also support detoxification in adults.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We're a digestive health company, so we really, as Jordan likes to say in his lectures, we don't just put a sprinkle of that subtilis in there. It's really a whole bottle in there. It's approximately equal to the amount you'll get in each serving of Primal Defense.
Wow.
We don't do label dressing in our formulas. We really like to put, the clinically studied ingredients at their clinical potencies. And that's sort of a underlying theme of our whole product formulation team.
Well, that makes perfect sense, Bruce. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and let's take a break here, and let's come back in part 2, and we will discuss the other cool Garden of Life products we brought up today, which is going to include raw meal. That just takes the raw protein concept a step further, as well as some other neat stuff. And this is Dave Gall with What About Nutrition, brought to you by O'Fallon Nutrition, O'FallonNutrition.com.